Okay, well, first off, I just want to thank you for allowing us to have this time with you. And just a quick little interview, so let's get started with the questions. Could you briefly describe your role as a teacher assistant and the types of students that you worked with?
So as a teacher assistant, I would help the teacher. My role was to help the teacher. And I would work with small groups or reinforce the lesson. I would teach the students that didn't understand the lesson. And I worked, at the time I was in a self-contained class, which is where I worked with students that either had Down syndrome, they had autism, they were on the spectrum, ADHD, ADD, but a little more severe. But I have worked with all levels of ADHD or ADD.
From your experience, what does mental ableism look like in schools, even if it's not intentional?
So mental ableism, right? Prejudice, right? Whenever someone has a learning disability. What does it look like in school? I think a lot of the times it can look like assuming that a student is lazy. So you'll sometimes, teachers will think, oh, the student is lazy, but there's more to it than just being lazy. Maybe he has a learning disability that affects his learning style. And also when you underestimate what they can do, like their capabilities, that's also another way of them showing that. When you assume that they can only do so much whenever they can produce way more than what you're giving them.
Can you share an example of a moment when a student with special needs was misunderstood or unfairly treated in a school setting?
I think misunderstood, we can talk about testing. I think that if a student doesn't do well on a test, a lot of teachers, again, it goes back to thinking that they just don't know, or that they're, I go back to the word lazy because people do assume that. But I think we can see that a lot of students don't learn the same way, and we shouldn't judge them based on these standardized tests or any type of testing, because like I said, all students learn a different way. So maybe some students excel on writing, but others can do better with talking, or maybe like hands-on projects or things like that.
And I guess kind of to dig deeper into your response, because you did mention about the testing, how does the school's expectations in regards to testing, behavior rules, or classroom structure, how does that sometimes disadvantage students with mental or learning disabilities?
Definitely disadvantage on students that have learning disabilities, especially like in classroom settings. Students are expected to just sit still and listen to the teacher. And just going back to that, not that we don't all learn the same way. A lot of students need to walk around. I know that I'm a person that is always constantly moving, so that helps me focus. And so a lot of the students might need that too. A lot of the students are looking around, and that doesn't mean that they're not paying attention, but that helps them focus, or maybe that's their way to understand and keep the material in their mind, or whatever they're learning in mind. But yeah, definitely there's a big disadvantage with the testing. Like I said, we expect for the students to all do great on the same test, but we can't test all students the same way. The expectations in classroom where they just have to sit down and listen, which is why I think in my room I try to do projects so the students can talk or things like that, instead of just sitting and listening to the teacher or to me give a lesson.
What role do teachers and staff play in either reinforcing or challenging mental ableism?
I think having high expectations, not lowering them. I think that we should expect the same things from the students, but also keep in mind that if maybe they need extra support, to have that extra support for them, but definitely not lowering those expectations for students with learning disabilities. Challenging them, but yes, giving them the support that they need.
Was that a common thing for teachers to like lower their standards?
I think I have seen it in previous years, other schools. I have seen that teachers do lower the expectations. So they're like, oh, it's because they're a little bit different. They would lower the expectations. But I think all students are capable of doing the same work. But like I said, we do have to help them by giving them the materials that they need, whether it be maybe highlighters or cards, or maybe slowing things down for them, or doing, providing them with, if we have slides, providing them with the slides so they can go back at home and review. Just anything that will help them.
How do labels like IEPs or diagnosis help students, and how can they sometimes unintentionally harm them?
So I think labels can be very, very helpful because they will provide like accommodations and especially like legal protections too. So if a student needs extra time on a test, those labels will help the teacher, will help the student, and will help the teacher understand that they need more time on the test. So labels are very important in that manner, but they can also be, they can also harm them. They can also harm them because sometimes people tend to just focus on the label and not see them as like a person, and they're just too focused on like, oh, this student is ADHD and he is the way he is because he's ADHD. And I feel like they should not be, we should not look at students and think just of their label, because at the end of the day, they are a person, they're not their label.
If you could change one thing about how schools support students with special needs, what would it be and why?
I think one thing that, as a teacher, I think all teachers can benefit from this is just training for teachers to work, with the different students, and just maybe, well, the training will definitely help because they'll provide tools that we can use in our classroom. So yeah, definitely more training for teachers and just for a school to be more inclusive, and yeah.
And then our final question, from a moral or a faith-based perspective, why do you think that fighting mental ableism in schools matters?
It matters because at the end of the day, we're all human, and like I said at the beginning, we don't want to judge students based on their label, and what we show here at school or what teachers do, it does reflect, justice, our compassion with the students, and inclusion, which is very important, especially with students that have learning disabilities. And then based on like our faith, at the end of the day, we were all created for a purpose. So even if you have a learning disability, there is purpose for all of us. And I think it's very important that we carry that in our classrooms and as teachers, that we don't forget that we have a purpose and we are human, and our students have a purpose, and they also have, they're more than their label.
All right, well, that's all the questions we have for you. Thank you very much again for your time.
Thank you so much.